Fabulous Tales and Fables ASAP by Owen T. Duggan. Story 8. Bad Lords and Ladies, Good Slave.
Bad Lords and Ladies, Good Slave. Section 3. Changes.
After all the dark wood was laid unceremoniously to rest, the task was to fill the holes with dirt, and to make the mounds look irregular, lacking pattern. The buzzword was "Frontierize!" No problem. At food time, a double dose of the delicious new vitamins was administered. It was dessert. "You flaming chunks of space dung! Do not neglect to eat every single one of your vitamins," they were told. Not necessary to tell us that, thought the oddball slave. We'll eat your pills, even if you say they're poison. We'll do what we're told, right? That's how dedicated a good slave is. And you won't kill us, inasmuch as we are useful to you. A special message came at the start of the next update, which sort of made sense to do at the end of a big project. A chef-tasker with a nasty scowl first listed off the tasks achieved thus far, giving no praise or word of thanks, of course. No, "Nice job, people!" nor, "The master knew you could do it!" This was Vars, not Earth. Said the scowling tasker, "There are too many slaves. We don't need to use so many here now. Therefore, we are going to do something special tomorrow." That was the full message. It was accepted without reaction by the herd of male slaves. But to the oddball, it was cause for anxiety. If they're going to do something, they should just do it, not talk about it. That would spare me the useless aggravation. It had to be something new, like the special vitamins. What were the possibilities? They could take them away to the breeding farms, at which point the secret oddball's sex would be exposed, and there would be punishment for lying all this time. Or some slaves could be taken away for liquidation. At worst, some could be killed on the spot. The outcome to hope for was to be traded to another lord or lady to start a new project. Whatever was done, the highest virtue of being useful must be served. As for today's task update, it was keep making the mounds look irregular. Frontierize! Next day came that unpleasant chef-tasker, who opened with a scowl and a question. "Have you been eating your vitamin? The Lord Marquis of the Frontier requires that all slaves eat their vitamin. However, I am afraid we did not bring enough vitamin today. Not enough vitamin were manufactured at the experimental pharmaceutical laboratory." Then came the big chill, and the oddball could physically feel the tingle. "Therefore," said the scowling chef-tasker, "we do need to kill a few of you." There was shuffling of feet in the anxious herd, but no protest. Whatever was to be done, it was fate. It was what it was. Death happened and will happen again. "I know someone who is useless," blurted a slave. It was the slave who before had accused the oddball of being antisocial. Oddball froze, thinking, "Here it is. I'm dead. I'm a dead corpse." "Oh, and you are useful?" asked the chef-tasker, looking at the one who had spoken out of turn. "I'm very useful, chef-tasker. I'm a hard worker, but that one doesn't dig. I saw that one faked digging, and sometimes he stares at green soap." He was pointing at Oddball. who felt a rising urge to do the unthinkable, to break into an all-out sprint towards the horizon with its muddy, swirling glow. The tasker had a private whisper with the entourage of apprentices and personal slaves. A band of them, carrying knives, moved into the herd, pushing them aside till they arrived at the one who had spoken out. He was still pointing, being useful by indicating the useless one. They held him, however, stabbed him to death, and watched him crumple to the ground. Said the chef-tasker,
"Does anyone else think they are a harder worker than any other?"
The knife-wielders came back to the tasker, received more orders, then walked through the herd, inspecting people's faces. They killed several more slaves, maybe culling the ones that looked about to say something. No one did say something. Everyone, including Oddball, tried to look as though they weren't even thinking anything. The killing done, the chef continued to speak.
"Look at it this way. Now those who live are all the more useful because not too useful. You want to be useful, don't you? What is useful now is slaves who don't work too hard. Walking around is now okay. Staring at things, good. Eating things, perfect. Useless is the new useful. You comprehend? You got it?" Useless is the new useful?
It took time to process the change in thinking. Oddball was further confused by a realization. This nasty chef-tasker was a female, not a male. Not that it mattered so much. It was just confusing to see that women can be as cruel as men. The rest of the day's task was to walk around and stare at things. They had to look natural. They had to make the mounds of dirt look natural. The buzzword indeed was naturalize. At least we don't have to walk around naked like wild animals in nature, the oddball thought, also much relieved that there was no back-breaking work to be done. If the oddball had any friends, it would be an interesting thought to share, something to scowl about. It might be something to smile or even laugh about, but such things were not features of behavior on Vars. The next day was surprising, as the oddball performed the task in the morning of walking around and looking at things and checking the mounds. He saw something else walking around and looking at things and eating grass. It was an alpacan. There were a few of them, in fact, the furry beasts strolling like nobody's business around the mounds and in the open, not a care in the world. Fleece from the alpacans of planet Vars was useful. It was one source for the making of nappy fluff bundles for bedding. Peaceful animals they were, timid, harmless, not useless. Like sheep with long necks and legs they were. It was pleasant to watch them.
Good news is no more vitamin need you take,
Chef Tasker told them that day with a smirk. It was, as before, the same ambiguous woman who looked like a man until closer inspection. We have something in common, thought the oddball, but far from everything in common.
And we don't need to kill any more of you,
the tasker said.
Just keep doing what you are doing. Everything looks good. Keep taking it easy. Oh, but the bad news is there is for you today no food.
No food, This was a twisted surprise. What were they supposed to eat? Grass? Along with walking the area, they were told it was okay to make any place their toilet. They could, in that way, further randomize. The toilet shacks that had been used up to now were torn apart and buried. Privacy was gone. That was tough, not having food. Painful. If there were hard jobs to do, they wouldn't have the energy to do them. Maybe that was part of the plan. It was somewhat like the Lord and Master knew what he was doing. And the next day, a puzzle was solved. The slave drivers definitely were up to something. Many more alpacans showed up, a good 100 of the things. Are they migrating, the oddball wondered, freely and on their own, to greener pastures? There were no herdsmen in charge of them. Curiously, about half the slaves were missing. It was time to talk about this. The oddball went up to a slave and presented the mathematics of the situation. I think people are turning into alpacans, the odd slave said, and was met by a blank stare. Nobody cared. If anything, the slaves must have wanted to join the alpacans, so they could eat. All the guys were weak from hunger and couldn't even think straight. They were like zombies, nearly brain-dead, useless as slugs on spinach. An update was given, again by the scowling Chef Tasker, who apparently was overseeing the final transformation of the slave herd, not to mention the end of the project. It was a formality at this point. No one was paying attention. People were wandering at will, tripping, getting up, slowly. Some were already down on all fours, munching at weeds and newly sprung flowers. The oddball, being no idiot, faked the behavior of an enthusiastic alpacan and munched away among those people not quite yet transformed. Weeds were sprouting naturally on the mounds. Even quick vines were beginning to embrace green soap stones, as they do, yielding a pleasant contrast of greens. Some of the new plants were not that bad, actually. Best avoid thistles. A solution came to mind. There must have been some kind of enzyme in the vitamin pills, an experimental one, developed in the wherever it was. That's what caused the change. But the enzyme only affects people who genderfied into the male sex. I'm not affected.
Now, a little bit about Varusian society, about its enzymes and its phenomenon of genderification. Vars had two sexes, male and female, but a person's sex was completely undetermined until they were a teenager. Entering teenagehood, an enzyme activated which differentiated a person, transforming the body, giving you either a penis or a vagina, and all that stuff. You randomly became either female or male, a she or a he. Then the masters sorted you into different groups for effective control, and that is enough for now about Varusian society. That is enough talk about sex.
Spitting out grass as soon as the entourage of overseers were out of sight was the first thing to do. Second was the slow gathering up of anything useful. Some water bags, the bundles of nappy fluff. Soon there were no other slaves in sight, only a loose herd of male alpacans grazing and pooping at random. They were harmless. Just watch where you step. Their coats were nice, though they were shy and aloof. Oddball was hungry. I wonder what alpacan meat tastes like. With the collection of nappy fluff, The final slave in the area made shelter, arranging a kind of swirl with arms converging on a small enclosure. There was laid the best bundle for a tired, hungry survivor slave. Time to sleep. Saying good night to the stars, the slave recalled some information about birds, and how they preferred to live and roost on the lips of the world, as in the edge of planet Vars. Birds were said to perch on the lip and gaze down upon the mysterious, inaccessible world below, the earth. And they could swoop down and eat anything Earth might offer. To see it someday would be fascinating, though highly unlikely. No slave was allowed to visit the lips of the world. Useless information to me, but all the same fascinating to think about. The slave surrendered to deep sleep. Waking up midnight was the beginning of serious discomfort. Hunger was gnawing at the gut, at everything. Crawling out to the cold night air was agony. Thoughts turned to mortality and the life cycle of people. The humanoid people of Vars, both male and female, became very hairy when they were old. The growth sped up uncontrollably towards the end of a natural life cycle. From nose and ears, hair burst. The top of the feet, the elbows, and under the knees all became carpets. Faster from everywhere it grew, till it was too much bother to cut. You had to give up. And you couldn't eat enough to keep up with the energy the body uses in growing it. And at the end of your life, the body looked like a big fat hairball. You died. They used the hair to make nappy fluff, blending it with the wool of an alpacan. So if you survived long enough, you were useful even in death. Except for me, the slave bemoaned. I'm no use to anyone. Is there any point in being useful to myself alone? It was a hard question. There were sounds in the night as the slave labored to keep moving around the circle of the enclosure. Alpacans were wandering about in the dark, stumbling into the constructed swirl, probably knocking the bundles out of line, by chance randomizing the design. They moaned in the dark. In the following hour, there was a change. They started squeaking, then squeaking more, in a panic. A panthera was on the prowl. The panthera struck. You could hear it. You could hear an alpacan being gored and killed in that order. And eaten. The slave could do nothing but huddle in a ball on the ground and try to shiver quietly and play that old saying in the brain. Queen Panthera must feed her cub. King Anaconda must eat the world. And everything that eats must eat. And everything must eat, must eat, must eat. I cannot continue like this. Cold night became damp morning. The slave found himself, or herself, or itself, gorging on raw alpacan blood and meat left over by the predator. Light-headed, sucking and drinking and trying to chew tough, stringy, uncooked flesh. Slave thought, I'll find where they make enzymes. I'll take some that change me into whatever I want to be, not something at random. I'm a grey patch panthera. I must feed my cub. I'm losing my mind. What's that? Her prowler ears perked up. Something was coming. The panthera is back? So I'm not the panthera. I'm the prey. The entourage was back. The slave crept over to observe but not be seen. No updates this time. No one to listen. No one left to kill or transfigure. The entourage surveyed from a distance the natural scene of scattered mounds and stones against a horizon of murky clouds, and they said nothing, though they did something that pushed the slave beyond despair. They collected all the nappy fluff bundles, dragging them away with rope and human mule, slaves, that is, like they had dragged away that dead body before, the one who was a person that died in the night and became an it, became a corpse. I'm dead, said the blood-caked slave, lying prone on the ground, shaking. Oh, Panthera prey I am, a walking corpse. I'm definitely an it. I'm definitely an it. I'm it. I'm dead.